I caught my husband's secret affair when I found his texts. The betrayal was worse than I ever imagined. Hi everyone. Before we get into today's video, I need your help. We've noticed that the channel's reach has been dropping a bit, and one of the best ways you can support us is by subscribing. It's quick, free, and helps us keep bringing you new and interesting stories. Your support means the world to us, and together we can grow this channel. Thank you so much. Now let's get to today's story. I'm writing from a temporary account for obvious reasons, and I've changed some details to protect my anonymity. They say ignorance is bliss. I used to think that was a stupid saying, something weak people told themselves to justify staying blind. Now I understand it perfectly. Because the moment I opened my husband's phone and saw those messages, I lost my bliss forever. And what I found was so much worse than a simple affair. My name is Elena, and this is the story of how I discovered my perfect marriage was a perfectly constructed lie, and how I made sure everyone who betrayed me paid for it. Let me start at the beginning, back when I still believed in us. I met Marcus 8 years ago at a friend's wedding. He was charming, successful, ambitious, a financial consultant with his own growing firm. He had this way of making you feel like you were the only person in the room, like your words mattered more than anyone else's. We got married 2 years later. It was a beautiful wedding, everything I'd dreamed of. My parents loved him. My friends were jealous. I remember thinking I was the luckiest woman alive. For the first 5 years, things were good. Really good. We bought a house together in a nice suburb. I worked as a graphic designer from home, building my own freelance business. Marcus's firm grew steadily. We talked about having kids someday. We took vacations to Italy and Greece. We had Sunday morning coffee in bed and Friday night date nights that we never missed. From the outside, we were the couple everyone wanted to be. But somewhere around year 6, things started to shift. Small things at first. Marcus worked later hours. He was on his phone more, always texting, always in another room when he took calls. He started going to the gym at odd hours. He bought new clothes, cologne I didn't recognize, started caring more about his appearance. I told myself it was normal. He was building his business. Men go through phases where they want to look better, feel younger. It didn't mean anything. But then came the distance. The emotional coldness that crept in like frost on a window. He stopped asking about my day. Our conversations became transactional. Did you pay the electric bill? What time is dinner? I'll be late tonight, don't wait up. Our sex life died slowly. First once a week, then once a month, then not at all. When I tried to initiate, he was always too tired, too stressed, had an early meeting. I started to feel invisible in my own marriage. My friends noticed. Are you guys okay? You seem distant lately. We're fine, I'd say. Just busy. You know how it is. But I didn't know how it was. I was drowning in confusion, wondering what I'd done wrong, why the man who used to look at me like I hung the moon now barely looked at me at all. I tried everything. I dressed up for him, cooked his favorite meals, planned romantic weekends, suggested couples therapy. He shot down therapy immediately. We don't need that. I'm just stressed with work. Things will get better. They didn't get better. 6 months ago, I started noticing he was lying. Small lies, stupid lies. He said he was at the office, but his car wasn't in the parking lot when I drove by. He said he was meeting a client for dinner, but I saw the client post on social media that he was out of town that day. I wanted to confront him, but something held me back. Some instinct told me that if I asked, he'd just lie better. So I stayed quiet and watched. And then came the night that changed everything. It was a Thursday in March. Marcus said he had a late meeting and wouldn't be home until after 10. I'd made dinner for myself, watched some TV, was getting ready for bed around 9:30. That's when I heard his phone buzzing on the kitchen counter. He'd left it at home, which was unusual. Marcus never went anywhere without his phone. I walked over to it and saw the screen light up with a message notification. Missing you tonight. Can't wait for Saturday. The sender was listed as Dave Jim. My heart started pounding. Something about that message felt wrong. The tone, the intimacy. Why would his gym buddy be saying he missed him? I picked up the phone. My hands were shaking. I knew his passcode because we'd always been open with each other, or so I thought. Our anniversary. 064. I typed it in. The phone unlocked. I opened the message thread with Dave, Jim. What I saw made my blood turn to ice. The messages went back months, hundreds of them, and they weren't from Dave. I love you. Last night was incredible. I can't stop thinking about you. She has no idea, does she? Soon we won't have to hide anymore. I scrolled up, my hands trembling so badly I could barely hold the phone. Pictures, intimate pictures, videos, messages, planning meetups, hotel reservations, weekend trips when Marcus had told me he was traveling for business. But that wasn't the worst part. As I scrolled further, I found messages that made me physically sick. Did you talk to the lawyer yet? Yes. He said if we can prove she's mentally unstable, the divorce will go much smoother. I'll get the house, the business assets, everything. How are you going to prove that? I'm working on it. I've been documenting her erratic behavior. Missing appointments I never told her about. Forgetting conversations we never had. I've told her therapist she's been acting paranoid and delusional. You're brilliant. I knew I loved you for a reason. Once this is over, we can finally be together properly. No more hiding. Just you and me and the life we deserve. I read those messages 3 times before my brain could process what I was seeing. My husband wasn't just cheating on me. He was systematically gaslighting me, manipulating me, building a case to paint me as mentally unstable so he could divorce me and take everything we'd built together. And the person he was doing this with, the person he was planning his future with, the person helping him destroy me? I scrolled up to find a picture, one where her face was visible. It was Natalie, my best friend since college, the woman who'd been my maid of honor at our wedding, the woman I'd cried to when Marcus started pulling away, who'd held me when I wondered if something was wrong with me. She'd been sleeping with my husband for at least 8 months, and they were planning to take everything from me. I don't know how long I stood there in that kitchen, staring at the phone, my whole world crumbling around me. It could have been minutes or hours. Eventually, I heard the garage door opening. Marcus was home. I quickly closed the messages, put the phone back exactly where it had been, and went upstairs to the bedroom. I climbed into bed and pretended to be asleep, my heart hammering so hard I thought it might break through my chest. I heard Marcus come in, move around the kitchen, grab his phone. A long pause. Had he noticed it had been moved? Did he suspect? Then footsteps on the stairs. He came into the bedroom, changed quietly, and got into bed beside me. I lay there in the dark, not moving, barely breathing, next to the man I'd loved for 8 years, the man who was plotting to destroy me. That night, I didn't sleep at all. I stared at the ceiling and thought about everything. Every moment of the last year suddenly made sense. The distance, the coldness, the lies. He'd been building his case, creating a narrative where I was the crazy one, the unstable one. He'd probably been telling people for months that he was worried about me, that I was acting strange. So when the divorce came, when he took the house and his business and left me with nothing, people would nod and say, "Oh yes, I heard she'd been struggling. Poor Marcus." And Natalie, God, Natalie, how many times had I confided in her? How many times had I told her I was worried about my marriage, that something felt off? And all along she'd been the reason why, feeding information back to Marcus, probably laughing at me behind my back. The betrayal was so deep, so complete, that I couldn't even process all of it at once. It came in waves, each one threatening to pull me under. But somewhere around 3 a.m., something shifted inside me. The hurt and shock began to crystallize into something else, something cold and clear and sharp. Rage. They thought they were so smart. They thought they had it all planned out. They thought I was weak, clueless, easy to manipulate and discard. They were wrong. If Marcus wanted to play dirty, if he wanted to destroy me to get what he wanted, then fine. I'd play the game. But I'd play it better. I spent the next day pretending everything was normal. I made breakfast. I worked on a client project. When Marcus came home that evening, I smiled and asked about his day. He kissed me on the cheek, a perfunctory gesture, and said it was fine. Long. Tiring. I wanted to scream at him, to claw his lying face. Instead, I served him dinner and asked if he wanted to watch a movie. He said he had work to do and disappeared into his home office. The moment he closed the door, I went into action. First, I needed proof. Screenshots weren't enough. I needed everything documented in a way that couldn't be disputed. I waited until Marcus was in the shower the next morning, then took his phone again. This time, I was prepared. I'd researched how to back up an entire phone's data. I connected it to my laptop and made a complete backup copy of everything. Every message, every photo, every video, every email. It took 15 minutes, the longest 15 minutes of my life, listening to the water run, praying he wouldn't suddenly cut his shower short. But I got it all. Over the next week, I went through everything methodically. I organized the evidence, created folders, documented dates and times. I found receipts for the hotel rooms he'd charged to our joint credit card, plane tickets for trips he'd claimed were solo business travel, romantic dinners at expensive restaurants I'd never been to. I found emails between him and Natalie going back even further than the texts, over a year. Their affair had started before we'd even hit our 7-year anniversary. I found messages where they mocked me, where Marcus complained about how boring I was, how I'd let myself go, how I was holding him back, where Natalie laughed and said I'd always been naive, easy to manipulate, too trusting. Each message felt like a knife, but I kept reading. I needed to see all of it, to understand the full scope of their betrayal. And I found the worst part, the detailed plan. Marcus had been moving money, slowly, carefully, transferring funds from our joint accounts into accounts I didn't have access to. He'd been undervaluing his business in preparation for the divorce, making it look like it was worth far less than it actually was. He'd been setting up shell companies and moving assets. He'd planned this for over a year. This wasn't a crime of passion. This was premeditated destruction of my life. But he'd made one critical mistake. He'd underestimated me. Once I had all the evidence, I made an appointment with a divorce attorney. Not just any attorney. I did my research and found the best divorce lawyer in the state, a woman named Patricia Chen, who was famous for destroying cheating husbands in court. I went to see her on a Tuesday morning, telling Marcus I had a doctor's appointment. Patricia was in her 50s, sharp-eyed, immaculately dressed. I sat in her office and told her everything. Then I showed her the evidence. She looked through it all, her expression never changing. When she finished, she looked up at me. This is one of the worst cases of financial and emotional manipulation I've seen, and I've seen a lot. Your husband is attempting to commit fraud, and if we play this right, he's going to lose everything. That's exactly what I want, I said. Patricia smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. It was the smile of a predator who just spotted prey. We spent 2 hours going over strategy. She explained that what Marcus was doing was illegal. The shell companies, the hidden funds, the manipulation. All of it was fraudulent and could be prosecuted. But more importantly, she explained that because I had proof of all his financial manipulation before filing for divorce, I held all the cards. Here's what we're going to do, Patricia said. You're going to go home and act completely normal. You're going to keep gathering evidence if possible, but more importantly, you're going to wait. We're going to let him make the first move. Why wait? I asked. Because right now, he thinks he's in control. He thinks his plan is working. The longer we wait, the more evidence he'll create, the more money he'll move, the deeper he'll dig his own grave. And when he finally files for divorce, thinking he's about to get away with it, we're going to hit him with everything. I liked Patricia very much. Over the next 6 weeks, I played the perfect unsuspecting wife. I smiled. I cooked. I pretended nothing was wrong. Meanwhile, Marcus continued his affair, continued moving money, continued building his case of my supposed mental instability. He started suggesting I see a therapist. You seem stressed, he'd say with fake concern. Maybe talking to someone would help. I knew what he was doing. He wanted me to see a therapist so he could later claim I was being treated for mental health issues. More ammunition for his case. So I went. But I went to a therapist Patricia recommended, someone who understood what was actually happening. I told her everything. She documented that I was completely sane, completely rational, and the victim of psychological abuse. Marcus also started picking fights with me over nothing, trying to provoke me into angry outbursts he could use as evidence of my instability. I refused to take the bait. Every time he tried to start an argument, I stayed calm, reasonable, almost eerily peaceful. It drove him crazy. I could see the frustration in his eyes when I wouldn't react the way he wanted me to. I also started subtly gathering evidence of my competence. I made sure to pay all our bills on time and save the receipts. I kept a detailed calendar of all my appointments and commitments. I had friends and family over regularly so they could witness that I was functioning perfectly normally. All the while, Marcus's plan continued. He took Natalie on a weekend trip to Napa Valley, telling me he was at a business conference. I knew because I'd put a tracking app on his phone during one of my evidence-gathering sessions. I didn't confront him. I just documented it. Natalie, meanwhile, continued to play the role of concerned best friend. She'd text me asking how I was doing, if things with Marcus were any better. She'd suggest we have lunch or coffee. I met her once during this period. We sat in a cafe, and she looked at me with false sympathy and asked if everything was okay. "I'm fine," I said, smiling. "Why do you ask? You just seem different lately. Distant." "Just busy with work," I said. "You know how it is." She nodded, but I could see the calculation in her eyes. She was trying to figure out if I suspected anything. I gave her nothing. The breaking point came on a Saturday in May. Marcus told me he needed to talk to me about something serious. We sat in the living room, and he put on his most solemn expression. "Elena, I think we need to discuss the state of our marriage." My heart was pounding, but I kept my face neutral. "Okay. I don't think this is working anymore. I think we've grown apart. And honestly, I've been concerned about you. You haven't been yourself lately. I think you might be struggling with some mental health issues, and I think it might be best if we separated for a while. Give you some space to work on yourself." There it was, the beginning of his endgame. I looked at him, this man I'd loved, and felt nothing but disgust. "You want a separation?" I asked calmly. "I think it would be best, for both of us." I nodded slowly. "Okay, if that's what you want." He looked surprised. I think he'd expected me to cry, to beg, to fall apart. Instead, I was calm. "I think it is," he said. "I've already talked to a lawyer. We can work out the details fairly." "I'm sure we can," I said. He actually looked relieved. "Good. I'm glad you're being reasonable about this." I stood up. "I'm going to go stay with my sister for a few days. Give us both some space to think." "That's a good idea," he said. I went upstairs, packed a bag, and left. I drove to a hotel, the one Patricia had recommended. As soon as I got there, I called her. "He made his move," I said. "Perfect," she replied. "Now we make ours." The next morning, Marcus was served with divorce papers, but not the kind he was expecting. The papers I filed weren't just divorce papers. They were a comprehensive legal filing that included evidence of fraud, evidence of infidelity, evidence of financial manipulation, and a motion to freeze all marital assets immediately. Patricia had been thorough. The filing included screenshots of every message between Marcus and Natalie, detailed documentation of every dollar he'd moved, evidence of the shell companies, expert testimony about his manipulation tactics, everything. According to Patricia, who heard from Marcus's lawyer, he called her in a panic within an hour of being served. But the best part? I'd timed it perfectly. That same morning, I'd sent a detailed email to the managing partners at Marcus's firm, the firm he owned with 2 other partners. The email included evidence of how Marcus had been using company resources to hide his personal assets, which was a violation of their partnership agreement. I also sent a carefully worded message to Natalie's husband. Yes, Natalie was married. That was another detail that made this whole thing even more disgusting. She had a husband and 2 young kids at home, and she'd been sleeping with my husband while playing happy family. I didn't include graphic details. I simply said, I think there's something you should know about Natalie and Marcus. I've attached some evidence. I'm sorry to be the one to tell you. Within hours, Marcus's entire life imploded. His business partners called an emergency meeting and suspended him pending investigation. Natalie's husband threw her out of the house, and Marcus realized that all the money he'd been carefully hiding was now frozen, and all his manipulation was documented and would be used against him in court. He called me 17 times that day. I didn't answer. He sent me texts. Elena, we need to talk. This is insane. You're making a huge mistake. We can work this out. I replied once. Talk to my lawyer. 3 days later, I agreed to meet with Marcus in Patricia's office, with her present. He looked terrible, unshaven, exhausted, desperate. Elena, please, he said the moment he saw me. This is all a huge misunderstanding. I sat down calmly and looked at him. Is it? Which part is the misunderstanding? The part where you've been sleeping with my best friend for over a year? Or the part where you planned to steal all our assets and gaslight me into thinking I was crazy? He actually tried to deny it. Those messages, they're not what they look like. Marcus, I said coldly, I have everything. Every message, every photo, every receipt, every financial record. Your lawyer has seen it. My lawyer has seen it. Soon a judge will see it. Don't insult me by lying now. He changed tactics, started crying. I'm sorry. I made a terrible mistake. I was confused. I do love you. We can fix this. No, I said. We can't. Please, Elena, don't do this. You're destroying my life. I leaned forward and looked him in the eyes. You destroyed mine first. The only difference is, I'm better at it than you are. His lawyer, a nervous-looking man, who clearly knew his client was screwed, tried to negotiate. Perhaps we can come to some arrangement, drop some of the fraud charges in exchange for a fair division of assets. Patricia smiled that predator smile again. Here's our arrangement. Marcus will agree to give my client 70% of all marital assets, including the house. He will sign over his share of the business to his partners in exchange for them not pressing charges for his misuse of company resources. He will agree to never contact my client again. And in exchange, we won't pursue criminal fraud charges. That's outrageous, Marcus's lawyer said. No judge would award that much. Patricia slid a folder across the table. This is a summary of all the fraudulent activity your client has engaged in. Financial manipulation, asset hiding, psychological abuse. Combined with the documented infidelity and betrayal of fiduciary duty, I'd say 70% is generous. We could ask for 80 and probably get it. Marcus looked at the folder, then at me, then back at the folder. I can't agree to that, he said. I'll have nothing left. You should have thought of that before you tried to take everything from me, I replied. The negotiation took 3 hours. In the end, Marcus agreed to almost everything. He had no choice. The evidence against him was overwhelming, and the alternative was potential criminal charges and a very public, very ugly trial. I got the house. I got 70% of our savings and investments. His business partners bought out his share, and I got half of that buyout. I also got alimony for 5 years, since I'd put my career on hold to support his. By the time the divorce was finalized 3 months later, I'd rebuilt my life, and Marcus had lost almost everything. But I wasn't quite done yet. Remember Natalie? She'd also been served with divorce papers from her husband, who had much better lawyers than she expected. He got custody of their kids. She lost her house. Her reputation was destroyed. But I wanted her to understand exactly who she'd been dealing with. I waited until a month after both divorces were final. Then I sent Natalie a single message. You thought Marcus loved you, that you two were soulmates who would ride off into the sunset together. Want to know something funny? While he was planning our divorce, he was also messaging 3 other women. I found those messages too. You weren't special, you were just convenient. And now you've lost everything for a man who never loved you. Was it worth it? She never replied. As for Marcus and Natalie, I heard through mutual acquaintances that they tried to make it work for about 2 months after everything finalized. But without the thrill of the affair, without the money Marcus had promised her, without any of the life they'd planned, their relationship fell apart quickly. Last I heard, Marcus was working for someone else's firm, making a fraction of what he used to make, living in a small apartment, paying alimony to me and child support to Natalie's ex-husband since he'd been named in that divorce too. Natalie moved to another state to escape the shame and try to rebuild her relationship with her kids. And me, I'm doing better than I ever thought possible. I sold the house eventually. Too many bad memories. I bought a smaller place in the city, something that's entirely mine. My freelance business is thriving. I've been on a few dates, nothing serious yet, but I'm not in a hurry. I'm learning to trust again, slowly. I also started a blog about financial abuse in marriages, helping other women recognize the signs, understand their rights, protect themselves. It turns out my experience, as painful as it was, can help others avoid the same fate. My friends asked me once if I regretted how hard I went after Marcus, if maybe I'd been too vindictive, too cold. I thought about it carefully before I answered. No, I said. He didn't just cheat. He tried to destroy me. He tried to steal everything I'd worked for, gaslight me into thinking I was losing my mind, and leave me with nothing. He betrayed me in every possible way. What I did wasn't revenge. It was justice. It was protecting myself. It was making sure he couldn't do to someone else what he tried to do to me. And I meant every word. Looking back now, almost 2 years later, I don't recognize the woman I was before I found those messages. That woman was naive, trusting, willing to ignore red flags because she wanted to believe in her marriage. The woman I am now is stronger, wiser, more careful. I know now that you can never truly know another person, that people can lie to your face while plotting your destruction, that trust is earned and can be destroyed in an instant. But I also know that I'm capable of more than I ever thought. I survived betrayal that should have broken me. I fought back when I could have fallen apart. I protected myself when everyone around me underestimated me. They say the best revenge is living well, and I am. I'm living better than I ever did with Marcus. I'm free from his lies, his manipulation, his coldness. I'm building a life that's entirely my own, on my own terms. Sometimes people ask me if I ever loved Marcus, if any of it was real. I did love him, deeply. The man I thought he was anyway. But that man didn't exist. He was a fiction, a performance, a mask worn by someone who saw me as a tool to be used and discarded. The real Marcus is the one who planned to destroy me for his own gain, and that person deserved everything he got. So yes, I caught my husband's affair when I found his texts, and yes, the betrayal was worse than I ever imagined, but the revenge was sweeter than I ever dreamed. I didn't just survive, I won. And Marcus, he learned the hardest lesson of his life. Never underestimate a woman you've betrayed, because she might be smarter, tougher, and more ruthless than you ever imagined. I was, and I have no regrets.